TV.
Good afternoon, this is John Roberts with IMC TV. Today we're talking with Doug Stewart, Master Certified Flight Instructor and Chairman of SAFE. Doug, do you think anyone with a private license can move up to become a SAFE proficient instrument pilot, or does one need a natural feel or talent to master this skill?
If one needs a natural feel or talent, how the hell did I ever get there? To be really honest.
Okay, so
no,
you think...
absolutely. These are skills that have to be learned.
Right.
That's why we bring a cat in the cockpit. When we fly single pilot IFRs and things get out of control, you can throw the cat up and feet are pointing down. We know which way is down now. The cat has that natural thing, but a human, you throw them up in the air, they're not gonna know. No, this is obviously something that has to be taught, and anyone can learn it.
Okay. New England, I'm sure, has the most IMC weather in the nation. What would you recommend to people living like in the Southwest or down like in Florida as to how to prepare and train in instrument conditions for instrument flying?
That's a great question. I wouldn't say that New England necessarily has a monopoly on IMC weather. I mean, there's certainly other parts of the country. This is a really good question. Because obviously when it's IMC out there, you don't want to be in it. You're talking level 6, level 7 mesoscale thunderstorms. You obviously can't do it. I think the best thing they can do is, unfortunately, to do it with foggles. However, the foggles and the flying with a view-limiting device addresses the issues of attitude flying the airplane via the instruments. However, flying the airplane is only one very small part of instrument flying. And that other much bigger part is working with ATC.
Oh, okay.
I mean, consider, example, I fly back and forth to Florida in this Navajo quite often, How much of that time is actually IMC? Maybe 3/4 on the departure till we're on top. And then a couple or 3/10 at the end when you come back down through. The rest of the time you're up on top of an undercast, severe clear. It's usually beautiful weather. But you're working the system the entire time. And so, to me, it doesn't matter where you do your training, as long as you're training in the system. And that's what so many pilots don't get to do.
Doug, do you recommend moving on to instrument training in the same aircraft you learned in? Are there advantages to that?
Depends what airplane you learn to fly in.
Okay.
If you learn to fly in a J3 Cub, I don't think it's a really good idea.
Right. But okay.
However, that being said, when we look at the realities of people who are learning to become pilots these days, many of them are affluent enough to be able to purchase something like a Cirrus or even a 172 with the G1000 suite in it. In that case, certainly, it makes that sense. What I do see in a lot of schools that still have these old slant uniform trainers, to be honest, we go out there and fly slant uniform airplanes in the system, and it can be done. And there are even probably people who are going out and flying with a single nav head, flying, in the system. They don't want to come to me as an examiner and take their check ride, because I guarantee they're going to have to do an intersection hole with that single nav. There's nothing wrong if they know the airplane. What I find, though, another side of this question would be the people who might own their own aircraft but get training in a different aircraft. I think the important thing is if you know what you're going to be doing with your flying, to train in an aircraft that is as similar, at least in its equipment, as the aircraft that you're going to actually be flying in the system.
Okay.
Not that you can't make the transition.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be flying something with glass, well, do the training with the glass.
Yeah.
Right from the very get-go.
Doug, do you recommend gauges or glass as far as instrument training? Are there any advantages to either one, or does it really not make a difference?
I don't think there's necessarily easier. I think we're starting to see, and time will tell whether this is true or not, that the glass is creating safer pilots. There are more tools there to manage fuel, to manage weather. Certainly at the start sometimes, the automation management skills that are required certainly boost the workload until you understand them. I mean, I remember starting with Roddick. The first time I flew glass was in a Cirrus that Roddick, brought up to me, and he's sitting in the right seat laughing at me trying to fly this damn thing. And all I kept on doing was just shutting everything down, saying, I'm going to fly this by hand. I can't figure all this automation stuff out, And, it took me a while. I have found in my experience that I think the transition from a legacy, we're not supposed to say steam gauge.
Oh, legacy.
Legacy instruments, the transition from those to the glass sometimes is easier than the glass to the legacy. I had a client a couple weeks ago, actually not in instrument stuff, but a sport pilot client who had been flying, I believe a CT, but with the Dynan glass system in it. And he came to fly our sport cruiser, which has legacy instrument steam gauges. And that first hour, he was having a hell of a time until I realized what the problem was. And it was that transition from seeing everything in one instrument, having the airspeed tape, having the altitude tape, having an attitude indicator, to, well, where do I have to look? All these 6-round gauges. And I think the transition is easier to come from the legacy to the glass, personally.
Okay. Can instrument and visual training be taught at the same time? How do you feel about that?
It is being taught at the same time. Middle Tennessee State has actually been doing it now at least 2 years, maybe 3. The FAA gave them an approval to do this as a kind of an experiment to see whether you could actually create an instrument-rated private pilot in one curriculum, in one syllabus.
Right.
And they've shown that it works, and they have been doing it. This is why the FAA has now this proposal in their NPRM to create that private/instrument certificate that's issued basically in one practical test.
I'm surprised they didn't do that sooner, because you would think that would just make a safer pilot.
Certainly would make a safer pilot. My concerns, again, get back to, yes, they have the skills to fly on the gauges, they have the skills to fly in IMC, so they're not going to, have that VMC into IMC loss of control accident. But again, do they really have, and this time will tell us, do they really have the experience in the system?
Yeah.
And that, to me, is one of the big areas I find that pilots are not prepared. They have the instrument rating, but they have minimal experience in the system.
Yeah.
A practical test standard says they have to have that 250-mile cross-country flight that's done filed in the system. Quite often, the applicants that I see coming to me as an examiner, the applicants that are coming to me to take their instrument practical test only have that one trip where they've really been in the system. Yeah, they might be, as we're here at Norwood, sure, they might take off, and so they're talking to Norwood Tower, and they take off, and they're talking to Boston Approach, and they might talk to Providence, maybe, but it's quite possible to do all their training right here in Norwood. Look at how many, well, you don't have that many approaches here. You've got your the RNAV and a localizer 3.5, but you don't have to go that far to get all the rest of your approaches. So you're used to talking to Norwood Tower, and you're used to talking to Boston Approach, and maybe Bedford, or but that's it. But you don't know about the handoffs between different sectors, between approach and center, and back to approach, and none of that experience is there.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if we do move ahead to creating this certificate where you become a private instrument pilot in one swell swoop, are they still really prepared to go out and fly in the system? Time will tell.
Okay. Oh, okay. Do you recommend that a private go on to his instrument right away? Because I hear about the pilots that go right, move on right into their instrument, or they take that time off for a year or two to become a private pilot. You get a little complacent, and they're not as apt to go for the IFR rating.
What I find personally, and
Yeah.
what I advise a lot of people is, as they come to me again as an examiner, they come to me, they've just taken their private practical test and they pass. And I've typed out or through IACRA, printed out their temporary certificate, and they say, well, I want to work on my instrument. And I say, well, that's great, get started on it, but spend some time flying VFR, but fly using radio navigation, whether it's GPS or slant uniform VOR stuff, and get flight following so that you start to get comfortable and facile in speaking and communicating with air traffic control. And I have found, I think, that the pilots who've spent a little bit of time now going out and doing their cross-country, because remember, you still have to build 50 hours of cross-country time. And unfortunately, a lot of pilots end up taking their instrument check, right? Yeah, they've got 50 hours of PIC cross-country time, but how much of it were they by themselves? Because they can log it with an instructor while they're working on their instrument rating. And so now we end up with a pilot who still only has 3, 4, 5 hours of actual solo cross-country time. And now they come to me for a practical test or any other examiner. They pass the practical test. Boom, we print out or type out their temporary certificate. Here you go. Now you're free to go fly in the system by yourself. That's scary.
Oh, okay.
So I would rather see and mandate that, we almost go back to the old ways, that those 50 hours have to almost be solo rather than PIC. And this opens up a whole other can of worms. It involves the commercial certificate as well. The potential is there to get your commercial certificate with only 10 hours of actually being in the airplane by yourself. And all the rest of it is dual instruction. And I don't think that prepares a pilot to really make the decisions that have to be made, especially when we're flying single pilot IFR.
Doug, how does it make you feel to know that one of your most gifted students has become an advocate of instrument flying, to the point where he's opened his own safety organization? And how does it make you feel?
I am absolutely tickled pink. As an instructor, what really makes us feel good is to see a go farther than you have. You've really done your job then.
Yeah.
And I'm just so tickled pink to see what Roddick is doing. And I hope he does surpass me. I really do.
Doug, I want to thank you very much for being here today. It's a privilege and an honor to speak with you, and thank you for your time. This is John Roberts with imcclubs.org. Thank you for watching. We'll see you soon.